The 1974 tornado super outbreak was the second largest single outbreak of tornadoes in a 24-hour period in history, second only to 2011. Yeah, that one was fun. Who else remembers that one? Comment if you do. I want to hear any stories you have if you're okay with sharing. The 1974 outbreak, meanwhile, had up to 30 tornadoes rated between F4 and F5 occurring in that 24-hour period of time. Up to that point, it was the most violent tornado outbreak ever recorded. And this tornado stands out amid its peers. It was not only one of the most violent, most terrifying, most nightmarish. I mean, look at this thing. Tornadoes of the whole outbreak and history up to that point, but it was also given the impossible rating of F6. Even amid its most violent peers from that day, of the very worst that the outbreak spawned, this one stands out as particularly bad. Train cars were thrown into the air like they were nothing. Entire streets of buildings were swept away with nothing left, leaving devastation behind that looks like something from a war photograph. And children fled from a stage right as a bus came crashing through the wall right behind them as the school they were in was destroyed. This is the story of the Xenia Tornado of 1974. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy videos like this and you want to see more like it so that I know you do. And if you like tornadoes like I do, go check out my video on the Grand Harbor of Malta tornado. I'll link it at the very end. It's a crazy story among the craziest tornado stories and one almost no one knows about. So if you're a tornado fan, give it a watch and you'll have a fun fact to share. Alright, without further ado, let's get to the 1974 Xenia Tornado, one of history's very few potential F6 tornadoes. Let's start with the build-up to the outbreak that spawned this monster. On April 1st, 1974, Mother Nature was gearing up for a knee slapper of an April Fool's joke. There was a powerful low-pressure system developing across the interior plains of North America throughout the day. The storm was further intensified by a surge of highly moist air merging with it as it moved into the Mississippi and Ohio Valley areas. And the result was a clash of warm and cold air on different sides of the storm. And if you know even only a little bit about tornadoes, then you likely know this is bad. That is what you don't want. The meteorologists certainly didn't like it either. NOAA and the National Weather Service forecast severe weather to strike on April 3rd, but no one could have predicted what happened next. April 3rd had at least one tornado before the actual outbreak occurred, and this was in Indiana. As the day dawned, severe weather watches and warnings were going out from the Great Lakes to basically every state south of them, and the Indiana tornado was just the prelude to the show because the actual outbreak was about to kick off. Let's just say that if this first tornado was a firecracker, this outbreak was an atomic bomb. As they say in Twister, this is going to be a long day. It is not known for sure which tornado was the first of the outbreak. It might have been another one in Indiana, an F2 tornado that struck at 1330 Universal Time, but an F0 in Illinois is also suggested as possibly being the first one to touch down in the outbreak. Not too long after, though, a violent F4 tornado then struck Indiana, leaving the longest damage path of any tornado in the outbreak behind. The first F5 tornado of the day was also in Indiana. Go Hoosiers! We got this fun fellow you see on screen right now, but we didn't get the real monster, though. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Many of these tornadoes in the outbreak I could do entire videos on, and maybe I will throughout the year. That'd be kind of a fun project. Once a month, or every other month or so, I talk about a bad tornado from this storm. Maybe I'll at least cover the F5s. That'd be a fun series, but that'll be later. However, know though that for 18 hours straight, there were confirmed tornadoes on the ground, and at one point, 13 violent tornadoes were confirmed to be on the ground at the same time. It was a long day indeed. After it was all said and done, and the dust had settled, the outbreak would be called the most intense and widespread tornado outbreak in recorded history. That is until 2011. Now, onto the tornado this video is focusing on. The big, bad, and ugly monster that stands out amid the very worst of this outbreak and what it had to offer. And it was only on the ground for a relatively short time as well. You look up this event and this nightmare fuel picture is what you will be greeted with. This tornado just looks horrific. It does look like a monster almost, silhouetted against the sky. And like a real Lovecraftian monster, it struck without warning due to the lack of tornado sirens in the area. This tornado doesn't just look scary, it is, to this day, still known as the worst tornado in Ohio's history. So let's talk about it. The tornado touched down near Bellbrook, Ohio at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Initially, it wasn't a very strong tornado, but it was still a large-sized one, and it immediately began cutting a northwestward path across the countryside, moving at 50 miles an hour. This tornado became an ugly, rain-wrapped wedge with a clear hook echo visible on radar. Gil Whitney, with the WHIO-TV weather specialist for the Dayton, Ohio area, broadcast the radar live, trying to warn people about the tornado. Meanwhile, the monster was only getting stronger. As it raced across the countryside, less than 10 minutes after forming, it ripped in to Xenia. Now, a massive, powerful F5 tornado, it immediately devastated the Arrowhead and Windsor Park subdivisions of the city. Rows and rows of brick homes and buildings were completely swept away as if they were never there. And this was just the warm-up. The tornado was now barreling straight for the city of Xenia. And in the sky, if one looked up, they would have seen an ominous warning sign of just how violent this tornado was. This eerie photo shows the Xenia Tornado producing what is known as the dead man walking phenomena. And that is as ominous a sign as its name implies. The dead man walking is only created by the most violent of multi-vortex tornadoes. Ancient legends supposedly say that if you see a tornado creating the dead man walking, then someone, or even you, are about to die. And one such tornado was about to strike a populated area. A nightmare scenario was walking into Xenia. 10 minutes after forming at 4:40 p.m., the tornado ripped into central Xenia, tearing apart apartment buildings, homes, the Xenia High School, churches, businesses. They were all leveled and left in ruin by this monster, which had potentially 5 sub-vortices merging into it around this time. Some of these details sound like they're straight out of an over-the-top tornado movie. For example, train cars were reportedly picked up and thrown around like they were nothing in the 250-plus mile-an-hour winds, crashing into the ground or other buildings. In the high school, students were practicing for a play, and they were forced to take cover in one of the main hallways. Seconds later, a bus came crashing through the wall behind them and crashing onto the stage that they'd just been on seconds earlier. Another detail: the sound of this tornado was recorded from inside an apartment complex as it was ripped apart by the tornado. One Mr. Brookshoulder had left a tape recorder on and recording when he took shelter, and it was found again after the storm, and it recorded the audio of the whole event. Also, a 16-year-old Xenia resident, Bruce Boyd, recorded the tornado for over 3 minutes with a Super 8 8mm movie camera. The video and audio have been edited together to make one piece of media to represent this tornado, and it is terrifying. Meanwhile, the tornado continued to rip through Xenia, toppling over a water tower. It tore apart Central State University and finally passed through Xenia after leaving the place in ruin. Other stories include that of 16-year-old John Stainer, and his story went like this. I went home, and then I went down to the donut shop on South Detroit Street, and we were in the back playing pinball, and the lights went out. He then went outside and saw full-grown trees being thrown into the air, flying above buildings across the street, and his response was, "Wow, what a bummer. I better go back inside." When he got home, he found the roof of his house had been caved in because the chimney had collapsed onto it because of the wind. While traveling through Xenia, the tornado was not only at its most intense strength, but also at its peak width, at half a mile wide. Again, the dead man was walking in Xenia. In this absolutely terrifying picture, you see the tornado as it was tearing through the southwest Pinecrest Garden district of the city. This picture is haunting, horrifying, and hard to look away from. You just find yourself imagining what was happening at the exact moment it was taken that you can't see. Lots of tornadoes can have that effect, but this one is one of the most intense I've ever felt. After ripping through the city, the tornado then headed into Clark County, now traveling at 30 miles an hour, and it finally weakened and then dissipated. The tornado was only on the ground for a little over 30 minutes, and it did all of this devastation in that time. The city of Xenia was leveled. The same storm then spawned another tornado shortly afterward in Franklin County, but this one was not nearly as intense as the Xenia tornado. The dead man was done walking in Xenia. It all, as I said, honestly just sounds like the insane destruction you only tend to see in movies like Twister or Into the Storm. The details, the close calls, some of which just almost don't sound real, which is why this tornado was marked for being so intense amid its fellow F5s of the outbreak. I mean, look at this picture. Entire rows of homes were completely swept away. This picture, too, just shows the utter devastation this tornado left behind. The aftermath of this storm was among the worst, but it was also just one scene of many, many that was left playing in the wake of the 1974 outbreak. Across Ohio, Indiana, and several other states, similar scenes were all playing out. Similar devastation was all seen. 32 people died in the tornado, and over 1,100 were injured. Even those who had taken proper shelter, the tornado was simply so intense that even shelter wasn't wholly safe. The aftermath pictures look like a bomb was dropped on the city. Everything was just gone, obliterated, and swept away. Half the town was just gone. 2 Ohio Air National Guardsmen were also later killed when a fire struck the building that they were using as a temporary barracks in the town during the relief effort that followed the tornado, and they are listed on the memorial in downtown Xenia today, along with those who were killed in the tornado itself. Many people not only had physical damage, but emotional damage too. One reporter wrote, "In all, 9 people lost their lives during the first few seconds, before it even did a fraction of the damage, which made it so famous." The damage was so bad that President Richard Nixon even paid an unexpected visit to the town, and he said, "As I look back over the disasters, I saw the earthquake in Anchorage in 1964. I saw the hurricanes, Hurricane Camille in 1969 down in Mississippi, and I saw Hurricane Agnes in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And it is hard to tell the difference among them all. But I would say in terms of destruction, just total devastation, this is the worst I have ever seen." A month after the tornado, the Disaster Relief Act of 1974 was signed by the president into law, and help was sent to the town. Ever since the tornado, preparedness in the town and Ohio and in the country as a whole has been increased. Students in schools do routine tornado drills, and tornado sirens are tested weekly in some cases. I honestly don't understand how this tornado doesn't get more attention. I've never seen it get really brought up by some of the big tornado YouTubers I follow in more than just passing. It was one of 2 tornadoes to be given an F6 rating by Ted Fujita himself. However, it was downgraded to F5 after F6 was deemed inconceivable. But I can see how this thing was rated F6 originally. The sheer violence was on a scale you almost never see. If you made a movie about this, people would probably think some of the scenes I read about were over-exaggerated, like train cars being thrown like they were described, or how intense this tornado was, or how the students just got off the stage at the literal last second. Like, moments like that almost sound like things you only see in works of fiction. F6 or not, the scars of this monster still linger in the place it tore through today, and they will not be forgotten anytime soon. For the people of the town, the rating doesn't matter because those who were there saw it and saw what it did firsthand. As I said before, there is a few minutes of early home video footage of this tornado that exists, and you can find it online synced up with the audio recording I mentioned earlier. The tornado is absolutely terrifying in the footage, but if you watch it, it might give you just a tiny shadow of an idea of what actually being there was like on that day, because you can see it and hear it, and it both looks and sounds like a monster, just like the descriptions of it did. While this tornado doesn't seem to get heavily talked about outside of Xenia, the city remembers it well. On April 3rd, 2024, the city will hold a special outdoor remembrance ceremony for the 50th anniversary of the tornado, and I didn't even realize until I was reading that this is almost going to come out in time for the anniversary of the event. And that's just a coincidence. I completely blanked that fact until I saw the promo for the event online. It just didn't register with me. Let me know, though, any tornado you want to see covered in the future. There's a lot of stories like this that don't get told that really should be. And let me know some of your personal favorite tornado stories. For me, the three big topics I love to watch videos on are shipwrecks or maritime mysteries, anything paleo related, and tornadoes. And you can probably expect tornadoes to become a more or less regular thing to the video schedule this year. It's one of the big things I've been wanting to do videos on that I just haven't done them yet, and I think this year is going to be the year. So again, suggest events you want to see covered, and I think I am going to do a mini-series of the F5s of the 1974 outbreak, so keep an eye out for that. I'll probably kick it off closer to the summer, and I'll see you in the next video. That's going to do it for now, so have a good one, everyone. Thank you for watching, and if on the off chance someone from Xenia is actually watching this and was there that day or knows someone who was there that day, I'd love to hear your story. So thank you again for watching, and have a good one, everyone.